Time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. Our top story, President Bola Tinubu says the country has only a slim chance of achieving growth unless the people embrace a change of mindset and commit to nation building through collective effort. The president, who spoke at the opening of the 63rd Nigerian Bar Association Annual General Conference with the theme Getting It Right, charting the course for Nigeria's nation building, also warned that Nigeria would no longer sustain an economic philosophy that ensures the wastage of 90% of her revenue on external debt service amid many development challenges facing the country. In a related development, tempers rose at the Lawyers' Annual General Conference in Abuja on Thursday as a group of lawyers staged an unexpected walkout during a scheduled program. The event, named Unbarred, was scheduled to feature a mix of entertainment and discussions. However, the atmosphere turned sour when the lawyers, who had been eagerly anticipating the event, found themselves waiting for several hours for the show to commence. To their astonishment, the surprise act turned out to be Portable, a Nigerian artist known for his famous hit Zazu. Many of the lawyers questioned the choice of the singer and opted out of the show. All right, then, a very interesting development there. I think from one end, us seeing that, 63rd annual conference that the NBA has every year, very important to note that President Tinubu hasn't relented in trying to continue to, reinforce renewed hope with the Nigerian people. He's spoken about making sure that we don't continue to spend all our budgets on servicing debts. He's also, keeping in line with the theme, which is getting it right. He outlined different ways that he believes that this current administration, as well as his new cabinet of ministers, can get it right. But what's set out to be a very grand event has now been overshadowed by this occurrence with Portable, the Zazu crooner. And I think what is really interesting about this is what has caused this uproar in social media is the fact that, he's known for, even has a song called I'm Not a Prisoner, Don't Lock Me In. So he's someone that is not necessarily known for his vices, being agitated. He's gotten into trouble with the law, with police officers. So he doesn't really match the event, so to speak. I was reading an article that someone put out, and it said a journalist put out and said, even as polished and panache as that event was, the surprise guest, as you can see, the lawyers were not having it. Why would Portable come? And in his usual Portable fashion, he climbed on the sound equipment and was hanging from the speakers, performing, and it didn't match up. And it's unfortunate that is what has now taken over the social media airwaves as regarding this event. Okay, but before you comment on that, let's take a listen to President Bola Tinubu's comments at the recently concluded NBA 63rd anniversary.
Unless we employ change of mindset, we cannot achieve the desired progress. I'm not being cynical. I'm being factual. The hope is here. The critical changes and bold endeavors will be embarked on by this nation, depending on the cooperation and the collaboration of all of you in the private sector, the drivers of the economic growth and prosperity. Yes, it is a shame not to have electricity for the majority of homes in Nigeria. Yes, poverty is not a shameful thing, but not acceptable. We must banish it. So you all, reconcile thinking of investing in Nigeria must be a dream. But let's interrogate, how did we get here? The hardship. But can we continue to service external debt with over 90% of our revenue? It's a path to destruction. We cannot continue that. We have to make hard decisions.
Definitely. We just have to quickly take that. And I just quickly touch on another thing that he did speak about was, reforming the judiciary and making sure that members of the judiciary are paid well so that they're not exposed to, prejudice and nepotism and the likes. But I'd like to come to you, what your thoughts are coming from President Tinubu's comments and then the surprise revelation of Zazu Portable at the event.
And it took wahala to them. They now experience wahala. It's very interesting. I will start with Portable. There are certain things that you just don't do. There are certain communities where you will have certain kind of musician. If you take a certain kind of musician to a place where he doesn't belong, the people will not be able to relate. And it will be very difficult to relate with that person. That's the case with Portable being asked to come and perform at the NBA. NBA is the highest professional body for lawyers, and in their history, you will know that lawyers, they call themselves the learned people. And when you're the learned people, you will not want to be entertained by somebody who has a record of having disobeyed the law, of having done things that are illegal, of having said things that does not seem refined enough for that kind of environment. And someone who has already said he cannot be arrested by the police, and the police have no power to arrest him because he's a celebrity. All of those things he has said in the past should be the reason why they will not even invite him to an event like this. He's a fantastically, how do I put it, very talented young man, definitely talented, and he has his audience, and his audience, they really love him for what he does. So that audience should be the focus for those people. They should be the ones that will invite him. But for Nigerian Bar Association to have invited him, it gives one the concern that who are the people that organized the event and decided that of all the musicians in Nigeria and around Africa, this is the only one that they could bring to come and entertain lawyers. It's just weird. It's a really weird decision. But to talk about the other things that happened at the event, at the ceremony, the president was bang on point in terms of the things that need to change. And I will definitely say this. The president is not saying anything out of the ordinary. He is repeating the same story. A friend of mine was joking last night that what the president said, my friend was saying to me that what the president said at that event is exactly the same thing that everybody is sharing at the beer parlor, everybody is sharing at the barber shop, everybody is discussing
it's the
in
current
the
pulse
salon.
Of the nation.
Everyone knows the problem of Nigeria, and almost everyone know the answer to the problem of Nigeria, so it's not surprising. But what they don't normally see is to have the president of Nigeria rehash the same thing to them. Now, what we want to see is the solution. What are the solutions being put on the table? And do those solutions really go far enough to make sure, on the one hand, you're solving a problem, but you're not creating another problem? At the moment, the impression that people have, or the perspective that a lot of people have, is the president is trying to solve the problem that we all know and we know the answers to, but in solving it, he's creating more problems. Subsidy removal, subsidy has gone, he said. But in subsidy going, is there an arrangement and plan to make sure that you create a buffer zone for the lowest of the lowest, the bottom of the rung, the poverty-stricken people of Nigeria that runs into millions of people in this country? The numbers are increasing daily. So in solving that problem of subsidy, you're also creating problem of poverty. A lot of people are being impoverished. I'm aware of farms where people cannot work anymore because they're shutting down. Even just a day ago, just last night, or was it this morning, actually, a friend was telling me that she's going to shut down her farm because it's become impossible to continue to run this business at a profit. Everyone is running farms at a loss at the moment. And is the president aware? If he's not, please listen to us, Mr. President. We're telling you because we've got our fingers on the pulse of Nigerians and we're seeing what they're going through on a daily basis. So we know for sure that farmers are suffering, they're struggling. There is a need to do something as a matter of urgency. And that's why the NLC is also saying that they're going to go on strike for 2 days, warning strike. And before you know it, that warning strike, if it is not given adequate attention, it will become a more consistent strike. And that will affect the economy even more. Everything will begin to nosedive and spiral down. And there's a need for the president to listen to Nigerians. You want to do good. It's obvious you have the intention of doing good. But doing good means that you start from within the presidency. The members of the Federal Executive Council, everyone said that the numbers is a bit unwieldy, is a bit too many. Okay, you've already got them. You can't change that. Our prayer is they will deliver results. And there are people there that seems to just be cronies. Are they doing the things? Are they planning to do the things that will help the nation? We're not sure. We're waiting to see. But we don't have a lot of time to wait because there is no more time.
Already in
Every
September.
single time, every day that you spend waiting, a certain number of Nigerians die.
I wanted to just quickly answer your question. I know we were talking about President, but just to quickly snowball back to Portable, I was just reading a statement that was put out because you were asking who was responsible for bringing him. And there has been a reaction to this by the National Publicity Secretary of the NBA, Mr. Akorede Lawal. And he said he linked Portable's presence at the event to entertainer Obi Cubana's partnership with the program as the headline sponsor. He's insisted that they didn't pay for it, and that the reason why he was there actually was because he was the concert was meant to take place there, but it was at the unbarred concert, which is not necessarily part of the NBA, supposed to have happened after, and that of course that was the reason why they were supposed to happen, and this was the reason why they were not involved. They didn't know who was going to come. It was a surprise to them as well. I don't know how I feel about that statement. It almost feels as if they're just trying to, cover their own end. Yeah. But, at the end of the day, Portable, he gave the people who stayed back, as you can see, a good performance. And I guess next year, there'll be a bit more hands-on as to who will be coming to perform.
Yes. That is definitely not a sight for lawyers.
For lawyers' eyes. All right, then let's move on to our next story. Well, President Bola Tinubu has reinstated that military intervention in the Niger Republic would only be considered as a last resort after exhausting diplomatic avenues with the junta. During a meeting with the Nigerian Supreme Council of Islamic Affairs led by Sultan Mohammed Saad Abubakar III at the State House, President Tinubu says the forceful removal of a democratic government remains unacceptable. He's calling for a positive change in the Niger's junta stance to facilitate a relief in sanctions, expressing concern about potential copycat actions after the coup in Gabon. Tinubu underscored the urgency of preventing war.
We feel that the right way to do is to advise Mr. President not to go through a third party. If he had not given us audience, we will have gone through some other means. But he has given us audience, and we have explained to him, and he has explained his own position too. And we believe God will continue to strengthen him, to make it possible for him to continue to serve.
They came to offer him some advice on the happenings in the country. They've also solicited for his cooperation and to ensure that the unity of Nigeria continues to be maintained. Mr. President, on his own part, has thanked them. He has accepted all the words of advice they've offered him. He has also asked them to continue to engage, to continue to dialogue. And Mr. President has also asked them to be in the forefront of the national reorientation, which is one of the pillars of his administration.
Wow, it's really been an interesting week. You know, we just a few weeks ago, we were of course talking about the coup happening in Niger, and even more recently now we're seeing the same thing being replicated in Gabon. And I think what really stands out for me, I mean, I'm in no way in support of the coup or a coup happening, but at this point, I am really hoping that, you know, as the leader of ECOWAS and even Africa Union looking into this, is that they begin to look at the root cause of these coups. Why are they happening? What exactly is going on? Lots of analysts, you know, people that understand how coups work have come out to say that, see, a coup cannot happen if the ingredients are not in place. And one of the ingredients that are in place is the dissatisfaction of the people of that country. We saw people celebrating in Niger about 2 or 3 days ago. The women, you know, made their way to the front of the French embassy, you know, just clamoring for their independence, which is interesting because Niger is supposed to have been is an independent country, but it seems as if on the back end there's still this reliance on the French. There's still this reliance on the West. And then for me as well, when you look at Niger, a country that has uranium, that has gold, that is very rich in mineral, solid minerals and natural resources. And on the flip end, they are one of the poorest countries, receiving $2 billion worth of foreign aid every year. They have French troops on ground, but for some reason, they are still under the thumb of Boko Haram and other terrorist groups. You can sense the pulse of the people. They are dissatisfied. But what is important here, knowing fully well that, you know, we don't stand for coups, it's supposed to be a democratically elected government, is, as the Niger junta has said, we want 3 years for this transition. It's now up to, and I'm very glad that President, you know, Bola Tinubu has said we're going to continue to further diplomatic conversations, and not just saying, oh, we have the military ready to stand by, ready to take over. Continue to have these conversations. We don't want the military there for 3 years. Okay, how long do you want them for? Do you want them for 6 months? Do you want them for 1 year? What exactly do you want? And then I think it's very interesting to mention at this point, seeing what is happening in Cameroon and what has happened in Rwanda as well. You know, they are being proactive in the sense where these two presidents, and, you know, when we look at the president of Cameroon that has been there for such a long time, and even the president of Rwanda, the two Pauls, I was listening to Rufai, he said P Square, Paul and Paul, you know, try to make sure they can quickly, hurriedly, you know, retire the generals, make sure they are moving people out. You see, at the end of the day, it's always people around you. If they are not satisfied with the leadership, if you have in a way been able to twist the constitution to suit your rule. We're looking at President Kagame that has been there since 2000. This is 23 years. We're looking at Paul Biya, who has been there for 42 years. It's like, what are you doing? Is it your birthright? what are you doing for the African people? What are you doing for your citizens? Is it about, the control of the French, or is it about making sure that your people are taken care of? I am in no way, I am in no way a supporter of the coup, but we need to begin to look at the reasons behind it and understand that if we don't take care of these problems, we're going to continue to see it. 8 coups in 3 years. The African Union has suspended Gabon, has suspended Niger. But exactly what impacts does that suspension have? The African Union is starting to look like a dog with no teeth. How exactly are they making sure that this doesn't continue to happen?
Yeah, you will suspend almost everybody at the end of the day. You end up having no organization, because I keep making references to this statement by the president of Liberia, George Weah. He made it very, very clear that there is a need for everyone to realize that there are 2 types of coups. There's the coup by the military, and there's a coup by the so-called democratically elected individual, the sit-tight president or government that refuses to go. The sit-tight government that continues to have a situation where they're looking for 3rd term and 4th term, and the sit-tight government of the likes of the just ousted president of Gabon, Omar Bongo, who said that, I think it was it him? I can't remember whether it was him or his father that went to the UK, where was at Oxford, and was saying that in Africa, things don't work the way it works in other parts of the world. That in Africa, they can afford to extend, they can afford to extend their period, and there is nothing wrong with it. So the bottom line in all of this is that Africa has got to look inwards. We don't need America or France or United Kingdom to help Africa in any way, shape, or form. If the AU, if the ECOWAS and other regional bodies can come together and say nobody should do more than the 2 terms that the Constitution approves, anybody that is doing it, then Africa will rise against such person, because that is a coup against the constitution of that country. Because it's the same thing that they're doing, just like the military that is taking over. It's an illegality for any military man, any soldier, any officer that is working and receiving salary from the state to then fight against the constitution of the state. And it is a criminal offense for anyone who is a democratically elected individual to look for extension of their terms. So we have to work on this. Yes, Tom.
All right, then let's move on to our next story. Very well said, Mr. K. Now, the federal government has called on states on frontline areas to take necessary measures towards militating against the potential impact of the Lagdo Dam floodgate. Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betta Edu, gave the advice while issuing flood alerts during a meeting of the Presidential Committee on Coordination and Implementation in Abuja. Edu said that the call became necessary following an alert by the Cameroonian authorities to release the water from the country's Lagdo Dam. The minister, who spoke at the instance of the Minister of Water Resources and that of Environment, expressed the need for effective implementation of policies and rescue missions aimed at cushioning the impact of the flooding. Acknowledging the state government's zeal in tackling emergencies, Edu also urged them to ensure the immediate evacuation of Nigerians living in flood-prone areas to safer destinations. All right, then, earlier on in the week, we did have a conversation with a representative from NEMA, and I think what I was able to get from that was, one, that they're adequately prepared for this. But outside of that, I think what I wanted to touch on. I
like this word. They are adequate. They said
they're adequately prepared for this. But very important to note is, you see, this is not the first time we're going to have this kind of situation. Of course, this is being caused by, the release of the water at the Lagdo Dam. But even in Nigeria, because of global warming, we've had several instances, even here on the island, in Lekki, let's not go too far, where we have flooding. And what I would like to say here on the morning show is, outside of this, let's NEMA and the government also try to make sure that we're actually putting things in place to avoid flooding altogether. We need to put in the right carriageways. We need to put in the right flooding evacuation systems, so that when the time comes, it always looks as if it's when it's about 5 minutes to the time.
Yes.
We now start running helter-skelter.
Flood,
oh, trying to reach out to people. How effective is the communication to people in those areas? Because if you look at it, those that live in riverine areas don't necessarily have anywhere else to go. So what else is the government doing to make sure that they can actually take these people out of this area, so that we're not rushing last minute, and that so when these floods come, the people are not affected? And on the back end as well, I was talking about them being adequately prepared. It's not just about getting the people out, it's about making sure they have aid, shelter, food, a sense of relocation until the flood passes. I was very impressed with what the representative said, but I do believe that there's still so much more that can be done.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was going through my head was when you started and you said we've discussed this and we've had NEMA and FEMA and the rest of them on the station come together to talk about the things that they're trying to do. We've gotten to a point of analysis that looks like we're very close to paralysis. All the analysis has been done with regards to this. Every effort has been made to make sure that government is aware and they're doing something. But we should not even be here, as we have said on Arise News so many times. We should not be here at all. Where we should be is a place where it's called, there is a dam that will be taking the water that is coming from Lagda Dam from Cameroon. When it comes, then it settles in a dam that we have created. More than 10 years ago, budget was put in place to activate and to make it happen, but it never happened. We're still in a situation where we're managing this emergency rather than creating a situation where we will not have this emergency. Emergency of this nature, it is known that it's going to happen. Every year it happens, and every year we end up with what? Creating an emergency out of something that we should have a solution ready-made, that we don't have to go through this procedure. But my worry, one of them, will be the fact that we're having to create IDP camps. That means the money that should have been used in helping to create something that we don't have to spend money on, we're using that money for IDP camps. Opportunity for the boys to make some money. When you have IDP camps, you're creating business for people who want to take government's money and deliver almost nothing. So that creates a level of worry. We also have to look into the issue of the federal government has not been seen to have done its fair share of the deal, which all the state government, from Bayelsa to Rivers to Cross River to Lagos and other parts of the country, every single one of the emergency services are saying, we depend on the federal government to play its own part of this particular game. And the part of the federal government is to dredge the waterways, because the waterways is the responsibility of the federal government. They can't put their hand into it. Just like the roads that we have in Nigeria are not being repaired. Why? Because some state governments are making it clear. I think it is recently that one of our colleagues, Emmanuel Efeni, said he was in Benin, and on his way back, it was clear that there's a part of it that the governor of Edo State has put out a billboard saying, we're sorry about this road, please bear with us, because it's federal government road, we can't touch it. So we're getting to a point where things get spoiled, the federal government is not doing what it's supposed to do, and you begin to wonder, what is it that they actually get their hands dirty doing? So federal government, do your bit, state government, do your bit, but the most important part of it is to make sure that we make arrangement for that dam that was budgeted for more than 10 years ago. It is built, and this will be the last year that we will talk about emergency in a situation that it should not even be an emergency at all.
The line has been drawn. This is the last year. I like that.
Let it be the last year that we'll have this.
All right, then let's move on to our next story. The Bayelsa State Emergency Management Agency has condemned the invasion of a privately owned property that's housing food and relief items. The agency expressed concern over the health of the looters as the food items had expired. Arise correspondent Theophilus Agede has this report.
When I visited the privately owned palliative warehouse in Yanagwa, workers were seen cleaning up and gathering various expired or spoiled food items in heaps. Footage of the previous day showing unidentified people carting away food items from the premises into the streets are being shared on social media. The Director General of the Bayelsa State Emergency Management Agency, Walamami Grubia, provides an insight into what happened.
Since after the 2022 flood, the warehouse has not been cleaned. I went around, I saw some spoiled items, few bags of rice, few bags of gari, and some bags of beans, few, less than 10 or thereabout each, and decided to bring them out so that we can get a truck to do the evacuation to the dump site. So by the time we finished, it was a little bit late. And I left here a few minutes after 7 p.m. yesterday. By the time I retired back home, I had a call that the warehouse has been invaded.
Some residents, apparently burdened by economic hardship, were seen loitering around the premises.
They come to clean up for the place, and when they clean up the place, women come because hungry day. Women come to collect something. Something don't spoil. Rice, gari, beans, everything don't spoil.
We need their help. May they support us, because this side now flood side. As when the flood don't come, everything down there expensive. So now as everything down there expensive, so money no day again. So may government try help us.
Igrubia is unhappy over what he calls an attempt to politicize the incident. He says there is no attempt to hoard the food and that those who looted the commodities should get to see healthcare professionals as the items in question were expired food.
It was during the peak of the flooding that we were offloading those rice. So some of the rice got soaked. The gari, even at the process of distributing during the 2022 flooding, we noticed that some are black because of the bulk purchase we did. My fear is that those are very spoiled and expired items, and it's very, very unhealthy for anybody to consume. We need security in all the warehouses to protect, more especially what is kept there, so that it can go around to everybody. Every warehouse is a suspect.
Theophilus Agede, Arise News.
You know, this particular story, Mr. K, really breaks my heart for a number of things. One, as you were just talking about how people are even trying to, are looking at closing their farms because they're not making a profit. At a time where President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has declared a state of emergency when it comes to food, at a time where because of fuel subsidy and because of the current, harmonization of the naira and the dollar, we're seeing high inflation. And in Bayelsa State now, the statement that has come out by Basema is that it was owned, all the food that was stolen is owned by a private individual. And I want to ask here and now on the morning show for this, for the Basema representatives to let us know exactly who owns those bags of gari and bags of rice and tin tomato and indomie. It doesn't make any sense that in a state where, as you heard a gift in that VT, said we've been suffering from flooding, we have no food to eat, we have no water to drink, and there's a full warehouse of food, and you're saying that, oh, it's because it has expired or because the food is bad. Did you not know the expiry date? Did you not know exactly how you were going to store the food? How do you have people going hungry? Of course, they are going to find out where the food is. When a man is hungry and he needs to eat, at that point, nothing else matters. Part of the statement that he has put out is to, they are pleading to people not to devour these foods because they've expired or they might have gone bad. But you need to also understand that if someone has not eaten in 3 days, anything they find in that moment, they are not thinking about whether it's expired or not. They're just thinking about feeding their families. So how do we avoid these kind of things happening? I remember back in 2020 when the exact same thing happened, palliatives were distributed to different local governments, and what did people do? They took these palliatives and they kept it because they wanted to use it for the forthcoming elections. And I know that he's come out to say, the Bayelsa representative has come out to say that, oh, let people not politicize this, but it's very hard not to do so. How is it that we're seeing a repeat of the exact same thing? Stop hoarding food. Let's stop being greedy. Let's stop harming our own nation. It's food. Now, you're saying the food has spoiled. So in storing this food now, how exactly have you been able to save money? How exactly have you been able? I want to know the name of that private organization that kept food from 2022 to September 2023 when people in Bayelsa, when people in Nigeria have not eaten. I'm very, very disappointed that this is still happening in 2023 in Nigeria.
It's the norm. I remember that many years ago, there was a charity event where I spoke. This was in London, and I was going through the preparation for that particular speech. And one of the things that I went through was a portion of the Bible where Jesus said very clearly, the poor you will always have with you. So God knows that he has created the structure of the people on earth in such a way that there will always be some people that are poor. So when people talk about poverty eradication, I say, no, that's never going to happen. It's ungodly. But poverty alleviation, yes, that makes sense and that should happen. Now, moving to the subject matter, the poor you always have with you means that it's not only in times of emergency or flood or fire that you're looking out to help the poor. You cannot have the poor in your society, in your community, in your state, in Bayelsa, and then you have food that are kept in a storage until they get to become expired. And you have a reason to be proud of the fact that they're expired, and you want to go and destroy them when there are people going hungry. How does it make sense that you want to go and destroy something that people could have consumed? There are people that have lost their livelihoods. There are people who have lost their job. There are people who would have died of hunger in Bayelsa State because they just can't afford anything. And those people could have been saved by this. The poorest of the poor are the ones that we should all, every single one of us, within and outside Bayelsa State, we should look out for them. So those poorest of the poor are the ones that this food and products and materials and things that people should have fed on should never be allowed to go stale, should never be allowed to become expired. We should have done something about it. And the governor of the state, he has to say he is sorry for this, that under his watch, this kind of thing happened. The governor should apologize to the people and make sure it never happens again. And then make every effort. All the people that we saw that are alleged to have looted something that was meant for them. It was meant for them. It's for the poor people. And it is the poor. You didn't see anybody coming in a Jeep or coming in an SUV to that particular spot trying to put a bag of rice in their car. No, it's the people that can't afford to buy bags of rice. Those are the people that you see there. So, Jason, the bottom line is the governor has a duty and responsibility to do something about this, to make sure it never happens again, especially as we're focusing on the issue of another flood coming up very soon.
Exactly. Well, let's move on to our next story. Following the change of the constitutional order in Gabon, 90-year-old President Paul Biya of Cameroon quickly made key changes and appointments in the central administrative unit of the country's defense ministry. In a decree dated August 30th, 2023, President Biya issued a series of decrees appointing the rector of the University of Ngaoundéré, officials in some universities, and another transforming the consulate of the Republic of Cameroon at Ueso, Republic of Congo, into a general consulate. Biya, who is Africa's second longest serving leader, has held power as president of Cameroon since November 6, 1982 and is due to complete his current term of office in 2025. And still on changes to the military structure and apparently responding to developments in Gabon, President Paul Kagame of Rwanda on Wednesday approved the retirement of 12 generals and several officers, including those whose contracts of duty have ended. Kagame also ordered a number of other officers to leave the army on medical grounds. The retirements were announced in a statement issued by the Rwanda Defense Force. Among those eased out of service include 2 4-star generals, James Kabarebe and Fred Ibingira, 2 3-star generals, Charles Kayonga and Frank Mushio Kamanzi. Kabarebe and Kayonga have previously served as Chief of Defense Staff of Rwanda Defense Force. Kabarebe, who once served as the country's defense minister, is currently the senior presidential advisor on defense and security, while Kamanzi is currently Rwanda's ambassador to Russia. Well, that's all on the week that was.